students, I'm Achal Sharma, your educator. In this video, we are going to discuss about another poet, and today we're going to discuss about Meena Alexander. I must say she's a very important poet and a lot of questions are asked from her. So Meena Alexander is undoubtedly one of the foremost poet writing in English today. She is very famous. She was born in Ahmedabad, raised in Kerala, and then, of course, at the end, we find that she settled in New York. So she also worked in Hyderabad. We have seen that she got her education from Nottingham, UK. She also visited different places and worked at different places like Hyderabad, Delhi, and in other places, of course, in India. And then at the end, she settled in New York. So when you look at the different places, you must be knowing that yes, she has visited a lot. And because of this visiting and because of these cultural displacement, she is one of the most important writer when it comes to the diasporic literature. So we have already discussed Aga Shahid Ali, A.K. Ramanujan, and these diasporic themes are very important and prominent in both of these poets. But when it comes to the women writers, she is someone who is very famous and she writes about the theme, with the theme of diaspora a lot. She writes about cultural hybridity, she writes about assimilation, she writes about the dislocation she faces. She also writes about the women empowerment. She also writes about the problems that are women that were being faced at that point of time, and also it is the circumstances or the daily life problems that women encounter. Not only this, not only she is sympathizing with the women, she is also very sympathetic with the other people who dislocate from one place to another. So this diasporic literature is very much a theme in all her writings. She is someone who is not only writing poetries, but she is very famous with the other things as well. So she has written other literary works, essays. She has also written two very, very important novels and one memoir, Fault Lines, that is very important again. Right. So Meena Alexander has been writing. We have also seen that she has a lot of influence being from a Kerala family, raised in Kerala. So she has a lot of references from there, and because of the displacement, you can say that language is also a theme of her poetry, because she said that I don't want to confine myself in one kind of a script, right? She said that I want to write according to myself. I want to use the words I want to use. So she does not want anyone to dictate her, right? So with a rebellious attitude, she writes about this. Also, social circumstances and Hinduism that was going on is also critiqued. At that point of time, whenever she was writing, in those times, whatever the problems were going on, like the emergency period. So she has been critiquing these social problems throughout the different novels. So these are some basic themes that we see that Meena Alexander talks about. So she has received many awards, like the Altrus International Award that she received in 1973, the New York State Foundation for the Arts Poetry Award. It was given to her in 1999, and then the Open Pen Book Award, important it is, for her poetry collection Illiterate Hearts, was given to her in 2002. So these were the important awards. Alexander has established herself as a well-known Asian American poet in United States now, and she has published several of poetry volumes and collections, and many of chapbooks also have been published by her. Currently, she is Distinguished Professor of English at the Hunter College, and then she has also the Graduate Center of the City University at New York. So she has also taken the job of this professorship in English literature at the Hunter College. She has established herself as a brilliant writer, and not only she is writing the poetry collections, but she has also written chapbooks, she has also written memoir and novels as well. So she represents the migrant memories, the separation, the trauma, the uprooting, the exile, and the loneliness of the people, as she has been one person who traveled so much. She was someone who was fighting and wanted to know about her own identity. So this identity crisis theme is very common. Her literature has been widely published in different magazines, not only in India, but in USA and in UK as well. Her poetry is a representation of India and the migrant experience that a person goes through, or you can say the immigrant experiences that the person goes through. Her poetry reflects the connection between the two worlds, the one where you were living before and the one where you settled, and between the memory of the past and the present experiences that one goes through. So all of these are the themes of a diasporic writer, and she brilliantly deals with all of them. She is establishing herself on several fronts as a creative writer as well, as a child as well, and as a woman, and as an expatriate who now settled in America, right? So she is someone who explores the different issues, and also the issue of ethnicity is also very common in her writing. The traumas of the search of one identity is a very much a recurrent theme in all her poetries, and she tries to define her Indian identity. So she never tries to lose her identity. Yes, there is assimilation. She is someone who is settled now, not in India, but in America. But she is always trying to prove her ethnicity, always trying to prove that she is very much an Indian, and she won't overpower or do away with her own Indian identity. Her writing also contributes to the continuity of the Indian writing in English. Her multicultural abilities create a very interesting effect. So we see that the multiculturalism is very much seen in all her poetry. What is multiculturalism? It's the amalgamation of different cultures. As she used to travel, as she has lived from one place to, in different places, she is bringing different cultural values and she tries to assimilate it. Then she evokes the hunting of the memories of when she used to live in India. Her poetry swings between the haunting memories of the past and the troubled confrontations of the present. So she finds herself in between the present circumstances and experiences and the past memories that one can never leave. All those scattered images, all the nostalgic feelings, all the loneliness that immigrant faces, she is someone who writes about it. It represents her sense of loss and despair of migration. She searches for her own identity in a world that strives to define the acute sense of loss, and nostalgia is reflected. This is how we see Alexander's work to be shaped as, right? So all her work are shaped on these lines that I told you. So she's someone who writes about identity, she's searching her own identity, she's someone who writes about the acute sense of loss and nostalgia. She reflects on the creative output, she reflects on the interesting effect that her body goes through. She sees that there are haunting memories that will always go with her. She is also writing and swinging between the memories of the past and the present experiences. Now let us discuss some of her poetries and poetry collection as well. Then we will be discussing her other literary works and the novels also. So some of her best known poetry collections include Illiterate Heart, that came out in 2002. She has also wrote other collections like The Raw Silk, and both of these are important and it is a PYQ as well. They have asked these collections before. These poetry collections, Illiterate Heart came out in 2002, Raw Silk in 2004, includes a set of poems that relate to the September 11 attacks and the time afterwards. So as I told you, she was also writing about the social circumstances, the social crisis that were going on at that point of time. Whenever we think about a female, we always think that she will write about the suffering of the woman. But she's also writing about the suffering of the common people, and the social circumstances are very important. There are autobiographical events or effects always seen in the poetry collection as well as in the books she has also written, right? So this Illiterate Heart and Raw Silk talks about the 11th September attack and also the times after that. Then her collection that came out in 1986 is called as The House of a Thousand Doors, Poems and Prose Pieces. Another important thing, another important collection, prose pieces is she has written. It was republished with several poems from her early works, and in 1980 the collection Stone Roots as well was also very famous, right? So these are two another things that you should remember. So Illiterate Heart and Raw Silk, these are talking about the September 11 attack. She has also written the collection The House of a Thousand Doors, poems and prose pieces. She republished several of the poems from her early works, and her 1980 collection Stone Roots as well work on these lines only, right? Then Alexander wrote two further books of poetry and prose, The Shock of Arrival, Reflection on Post-Colonial Experiences in 1999, and she has also written The Poetics of Dislocation, and it was published in 2009. And it is very important, these are the books that contain the poetry part as well and the prose part as well. She writes about the women experiences. She writes about the different problems that they go through. Also, she writes about the different experiences that the people go through in their life, right? So I would repeat, The Shock of Arrival, a reflection on post-colonial experiences. It came out in 1999. And then we have The Poetics of Dislocation, that was published in 2009. These are few books that she has written. Then Alexander has published two novels, and both of them are very important, and already questions are being asked. So I won't say that read the summary and read everything minutely, but you should know broadly the themes. Right. So Namapalli wrote, it came out in 1991, and this was the first novel that she has written. This talks about, which was actually the Village Voice Literary Supplement Editor's Choice in 1991. And then we have the second novel, important, Manhattan Music. It came out in 1997, as well as the two academic studies that she has written, The Poetic Self, Towards a Phenomenology of Romantics, and this was based on her dissertation that she has given. And then she has also written Women in Romantics. She has written about Mary Wollstonecraft, Dorothy Wordsworth, and Mary Shelley. It came out in 1989. So what are the two novels that she has written? The two novels are Namapalli Road. It talks about the experiences she has gone through in Hyderabad. So she was working in Hyderabad at that point of time, and a real life incident occurred when a woman was burned and her husband was killed. So she encountered it, and then she wrote the novel about it as well. So it was a very much an autobiographical thing as well. There were some details from her personal life. Also, it was a true event on which she wrote the novel. So Namapalli wrote in 1991. Then we have the Manhattan Music in 1997. She has also written two academic studies. One is The Poetic Self, Towards a Phenomenology of Romantics. It came out in 1979. And on the basis of her dissertation, she has also written Women in Romantics. In this, she talked about Mary Wollstonecraft, Dorothy Wordsworth, and she has also talked about Mary Shelley. Let us move forward. In 1993, Alexander published her own autobiographical memoir, very important, Fault Lines, and it was published the second time again in 2003. The new material were addressed, and this time she published it with the help of another person, and his name is Neongi Wa Thiong'o. Right. So this is how Fault Lines came up with two editions. The first in 1993 and the second in 2003 with Neongi Wa Thiong'o. She has edited the other text as well. So she edited the Indian love poems in 2005 and Name Me a Word, Indian Writers Reflect on Writing in 2018. So she has also edited some work, and these works are the Indian love poems that came out in 2005 and the Name Me a Word, Indian Writers Reflect on Writing in 2018. Some of her poetry has also been adapted into the music scenes and including the different poems as well. So these poetry collections or these poetries are Impossible Grace and the Aqua Alta. Her work has been subject to critical analysis, and the book Manhattan Critical Essays on Meena Alexander was edited by Basu and Cynthia, and it was published in 2009. So she has been someone on whom a lot of people are doing their PhDs, and a lot of people are writing critical works on it. So there is this critical analysis of the book Manhattan, and this book is known as the Manhattan Critical Essays. And this work, as I told you, is of Meena Alexander. This critical work is written by Basu and Cynthia together, and it was published in 2009. So these were few things that you should remember. Her work is also been adapted as music. And what are these poems? These poems are Impossible Grace and Aqua Alta. Before we start with the description part, let us quickly revise what we have done so that you don't get confused. So till now, we have discussed that Meena Alexander was undoubtedly a very important writer. She has been writing about diasporic literature because she is someone who was born in somewhere else, and then she worked somewhere else, and now is settled somewhere else. So she is a person with a multicultural background. She has written a lot of texts, lot of important works, several volumes of poetry, and also she has written different novels and different critical essays. She has been awarded with different awards as well, and has now established herself as a well-known Asian American poet. Then she is someone who writes about the Indianness of Indianness, and she also writes about her own roots, about the Indian identity she cannot do away with, about the immigrant experiences. She writes about the trauma of being uprooted, the trauma of the migrant memories, the separation, or the uprooting, or the different exile, or the homeliness feeling that is always there, right? Then there are different works. Important poetry collections are Your Illiterate Heart and Raw Silk. It talks about the September 11 attack. Then there is collection called as The House of a Thousand Doors. Again, there is another collection, Stone Roots. This is also important. Then we have what? Then we have two books that are important, and these are poetry and prose book. This is The Shock of Arrival, Reflection on Post-Colonial Experiences. It was published in 1999. Another was The Poetics of Dislocation. It was published in 2009. These are few works. Then we have Namapalli Road and Manhattan Music as the two important novels that she has written. She has also written some academic studies, and these are The Poetic Self, Towards the Phenomenology of Romantics, and she has also written about the women in Romanticism. Then we move forward to her memoir, and her autobiographical memoir is called as Fault Lines. It was published later, the second time in 2003 with Nyong'i Wa Thiongo. Then she has also edited the Indian Love Poems and Name Me a Word. These are two of her works that she has edited. Her few poetry is now being converted into music, and it is The Impossible Grace and Aqua Alta. And then critical works are also there on her, and it was done by Basu and Cynthia, and this book came out in 2009. It is called as the book Passage to Manhattan Critical Essays. Passage to, I think this should also be bold here, Passage to Manhattan Critical Essays, right? So these were few things. Now, House of Thousand Doors, it came out in 1988, represents the influence of a family in order to create the artistic vision. She shows her relationship with her origins, her home, and also talks about her grandmother. This poetry resonates with A.K. Ramanujan's poetry, and the poetry was called as the small scale reflection of a large house. And here, what is the meaning of the house? Here, the house is culturally representing the own Indian culture. It is emblematic of the Indian culture. The House of a Thousand Doors also signifies that India has been very important, and you need to hold on to your individuality and the feeling of community. So these poetry collection talks about her relationship with her grandmother and also her relationship with her own country, and how it is important to hold on to the community feelings that she has. The poem Muse reflects the world of the personal loss, and she talks about memory and exile. So you go somewhere, you visit, but you always will have memories with you. The composition of poems in the early age saves the poet from the burning that she is feeling from inside. The memories are killing her, but because of the poetry collection, she is able to survive. Also, she uses her own language so that she can feel that she is still near her home. The Storm is a poem that represents the voice or the theme of a violence that is there, displacement, ritual order that goes wrong, dislocation, and the woman's experiences in a world as women is feeling dislocated because she has been traveling to another place. Also, she talks about the immigrant experiences and the dislocation through which a woman goes through. So again, there are autobiographical events here as well. It represents the memory as a medium and a metaphor to reflect on the narrative of loss. So she again uses the memory. She has been writing about memory also. She writes about how much nostalgic she feels, how she goes through different violence and different displacement phases, and she is under nothing but a storm. The poem Gold Horizon reflects on her childhood memories, and this poem reveals the wish of Meena Alexander to return to her own childhood. There are a lot of poetries in which she just wants to run away to her home near her grandmother. She writes about the different childhood and the memories of her childhood. This poem shows her consciously moving towards these two worlds between memory and the present day experiences. It represents the landscape of Kerala as well. So she remembers her homeland, she remembers Kerala, she remembers her grandmother, and she wants to go back again. So the theme of the childhood memories is very prominent in the poem Golden Horizon. The poem Black River Veiled Garden represents the various images and the symbols that she remembers from her own childhood. She also remembers her childhood in poems like Black River and Veiled Garden. Then the poem Softly My Soul, it came out in 1996, shows the poet's longing for the childhood memories, her anguish for the loss of all of these memories, and the child here, the memory of the childhood represents again the landscape of Kerala. So how many poems she is writing for the landscape that she remembers? She has been writing the Golden Horizon. The Storm is also talking about it. And then there is the Black River Veiled Garden and Softly My Soul. So all of these are different poems that are resonating, in which she just remembers her own homeland. She remembers her grandmother, her old house. She'll remember the old childhood memories that she used to have. Then she remembers the landscape of Kerala. So the theme of memory, the theme of alienation, the theme of violence, the theme of the loss that one goes through are very common. Then comes her very important novel, Namapalli Road. So Meena Alexander's novel Namapalli Road takes place chiefly in this city of Hyderabad amidst the unrest and the opposition that was going on, because the chief minister between the unrest that is going on and the opposition is there. With this unrest is between the opposition and the chief minister at that point of time. That is, he's called as Limca Godwa, whose oppression and violent rule is now being too torturous for the people living there, and the city's residents are now out to protest. So set during the India's state of emergency, that was between 1975 to 1977, enacted by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, and the aftermath, the war with where in the aftermath of war with Pakistan, elections were suspended and the government launched a massive crackdown of the civil liberties and any form of opposition. So what is the background of this story? The story is very much based on the real life incident that she encounters, Meena Alexander encounters on her own while she was visiting. So she saw one lady being burned there and beaten. She was touched by it and she wrote the novel. She was at that point of time working in Hyderabad and she saw this incident there. There was the chief minister Limca who had who had created this havoc at that place during that time. Also, there are other themes that are important. We have historical events like the state of emergency. We have the war with Pakistan, and also because of this, the elections were suspended at that point of time. So the book focuses on a young woman who has returned from England in order to teach literature and make sense with her own self. So she's someone who is very inspired with Wordsworth. She is someone who just came here to read and to teach, right? But what she encounters is all of these civil problems, and caught up between them, she cannot concentrate on the things that she thought she should do. So Meera is the protagonist. So Meera has returned after finishing her education in England. Arriving in a changed city, she becomes involved with this person called Ramu, and he is a very passionate political activist. As her relationship with Ramu deepens, so is her understanding of the political situations that were going on in Hyderabad. So she is now caught up between her love for poetry and the political conditions that are going on. She cannot decide what to write about and what to study. Meera struggles to reconcile her studies, her love for poetry and literature, with the different violent reality that she sees in the city. So maybe she has been in love with Wordsworth, and he writes in such a beautiful manner, but she is awestruck with the reality that she encounters in the city. The novel's vivid and poetic language traces Meera's political awareness, and her witnessing of the life on the Namapalli road grows more involved with the protest surroundings, the brutal gang rape of this Muslim woman, Ramiza Bey, and the murder of her husband with the hands of the police only. So it is the police who did this gang rape of a Muslim woman, and also they were someone who murdered her husband. So when she encounters this on this incident on the Namapalli road, Meera is awestruck. She does not know what to do. She is stuck between her love for poetry and literature and the protest scenes that were going on there. So you see that this two-part expert, Meera, attempts to explain the beauty and the relevance of Wordsworth in her own studies. Also, she is pulled from the classroom to see outside. She just cannot live in the abstract world anymore. She cannot meditate in the abstract world because she knows that the real life incidents are so brutal and so heart-touching. So in this entire novel, she's talking about the conflict that goes on between the circumstances that are there and between the love for the poetry in the character Meera. Right? So this is the picture of the novel. Now, Manhattan Music. So it's again a novel about the immigrant experiences and how the woman faces problem. There are different women and all of them come forward, talk about their own problems in a different country and how they want to survive. So as a positive assertion of the great potential of a diasporic life, we see the Manhattan Music. The immigrant has no longer to feel rootless. They should not feel alienated in the foreign land. Instead, they should focus on the improvement of their own life. Through a series of experiences of women characters in Manhattan Music, the novelist here suggests the ways to negotiate the life she has been living and the life that the foreign country has provided her. So she is negotiating her life in the foreign country. She rejects the belief that one stands in danger of losing one's identity and would be forced to merge in the melting pot. So what is melting pot? Melting pot is this, tagline was very famous in this diasporic world. All these writers said that America or American civilization is a world of a melting pot. So there are different people just settling there. We also saw different other novels also that were talking about this melting pot culture. All of them are assimilating and coming together. But she is saying, what Meena Alexander is trying to say is that the immigrant is not only there and they should not be afraid of losing their own identity. They are not to be forced to just take part in the salad bowl culture or the melting pot. Not all the salad is the same. You just cannot displace yourself or your memories with the existing culture that you had or with the culture that you are living in. You are someone who should, just have your own identity and then live happily in a pot, right? So she's saying that a person should not be scared of living in a foreign land. Instead, they should improve their own life and their living. So in the Manhattan Music, Sandhya undergoes traumatic experiences which are marked by the different interventions. She understands about the cross-cultural initiations that goes through there. So she has different experiences of extraterritorialism, and she also talks about the cross-cultural initiations. So these are few things. This is the picture of the novel, the front page of Manhattan Music. Then the Poetics of Dislocation. So in Meena Alexander's Poetics of Dislocation, the question of home is being asked. What is the possibility? What is home? What is a place where you are happy? It gives rise to a new kind of architecture of poetry. So in this way, she is talking about, in this poetic phrases only, she is talking about the question of what is home. For Alexander, the function of poetry is to build imaginary homes for the migrant subjects. So she has been, and in many interviews, she also says that I was feeling so dislocated. It was the poetry that let me live. So I need experiences to write, and hence the poetry becomes more and more beautiful. And the function of the poetry is to let her live. The function of the poetry is to build imaginary homes for the immigrant subject, and this function emerges from the flesh of language that one should use according to themselves and the framing capacity of poetry. It is always a homeless home, a paper boat and a tent, or it can be anything, but it is always oneself that one's write about. It is thus, this work is about the poetic journey of how one can write with one's own experiences. So in this work, the Poetics of Dislocation, she is dealing with the concept of home. What is a home? Which is the place where you live happily? Also, she says that this poetry is something that lets me live, because I am building imaginary images and imaginary homes and finding solace in the poetry only. Then this is a picture of the front page of Poetics of Dislocation. The Poetics of Dislocation is divided into different parts. So it is divided into 5 layered parts. These critically bridge the theoretical concerns of what Meena Alexander was trying to talk about. The parts are poetry and place. Then we have picturing sense. We have migrant memories, Poetics of Dislocation, and in conversation. So these are important things. You should know the parts, the 5 parts, and the names of the 5 parts as well. Broadly, what she's talking about the home. These trips, and she's talking about the act of reading by the poets in different lands whose works invite us to cross the borders of ourselves, and in order to expand our own life and to have a life that is new, and maybe a life that you can survive on your own. Right? So maybe even to survive, she has been traveling, and she will understand one day what is her home. Her poetry is her home. So this was the Poetics of Dislocation. Then Fault Lines, as I told you, first of all came out in 1993 and then came out again in 2003 with the help of Neungi wa Thiongo. So Meena's discursive history talks about she's writing here with the help of this bibliographic writing. So it's a memoir, and it's very important and very special for her. She writes about the different circumstances that she goes through. She writes how it is her own family member who tries to molest her. So she will write about these different experiences that are directly shown in the work. So the shock of being a woman without history in this new world is basically a theme of the memoir. The book, over and above, traces the province of different Meena's essential life, Meena's essential being that distinguishes her from other in the world she is living. And these are all seen in the chronological order. So it becomes a memoir, an autobiographical writing that she is writing. She is also talking here about the molestation that she goes through, and it was done by someone from her own family. Now these, I hope you can see it. These are the different early works. These are the different collections. Then we have chapbooks. Now what are chapbooks? Chapbooks are the books that have that are of 40 pages or less, right? So there are different chapbooks, and then we have poetries and essays, then we have different novels, memoirs, and criticism that she has written. And because she is such an important writer, I see questions coming again and again from her. That is why you should take a screenshot, pause the video, and just learn at least, or just just read it once, that there are different novels, books, chapbooks that she has written, and you should also know the dates, right? So early works: The Bird's Bright Ring, I Wrote My Name, Without Place in the Middle Earth. This is a performance piece, and all are long poetry that she has written. Then we have some collections like Stone Roots, The House of Thousand Doors, River and Bridge, Illiterate Heart, Raw Silk, Quickly Changing River, Birthplace with Buried Stones, Atmospheric Embroidery, In Praise of Fragments. There are some chapbooks like The Storm, The Night Scene, The Garden. Then we have Dreaming in Shimla. These are the letters to my mother. Then we have some essays, poetry and essays, The Shock of Arrival, Poetics of Dislocation. Both are important. Then we have novels like Namapalli Road and Manhattan Music. Memoir, Fault Lines, and it came out again with Nyungi wa Thiong'o. Then we have criticism, The Poetic Self Towards the Phenomenology of Romantics and Women in Romanticism. She talks about Mary Wollstonecraft, Dorothy Wordsworth, and Mary Shelley. Right? Now I have one question for you. Which of the collections of the poems are not written by Meena Alexander? River and Bridge, Articulate Silence, Raw Silk. Then we have Stone Roots and A Time to Change. So this is, now you can pause the video and you can answer the question. So what do you think should be the right answer? Okay, so the right answer should be D. It is River and Bridge is written by her. Articulate Silence is written by Shiv K. Kumar. It is written by Shiv K. Kumar. And A Time to Change is written by Naseem Ezekiel. A Time to Change is written by Naseem Ezekiel. This means that B and E are not written by Meena Alexander. So D becomes the right answer. Stone Roots, Raw Silk, and River and Bridge are the collections of poetry that are written by Meena Alexander, and we have just now revised it as well, right? So we have Rivers and Bridge, Raw Silk, Illiterate Heart, and many more. So I hope you have understood, and you have understood everything. And then I know it's a lot of facts, but you have to remember, because she's someone from whom I have seen a lot of questions being asked. And this question that I showed you is also a PYQ. So these type of questions are asked. You should know about the different works that she has written. Also know the broad themes about which Meena Alexander used to write. So I hope you liked today's class. If you have any doubt, you can write it in the comment section and I will surely reply to you. Thank you.